Okay, so this is going to be an audio lecture for the reading for case study 6, called The Sources of Success and Failure of IT Projects and Project Managers Perspective. So what exactly are the causes of IT projects successes and failures? Now there are various projects that obviously involve the information technology, and there are several reasons for its success as well as for its failures. The situations keep changing, and various situations arise that obviously the blame cannot just be thrown completely at the IT department. It's going to be a blame that's going to be taken by several other areas as well. But obviously the IT department is going to be blamed for it, and there are several reasons for it because they're going to be involved in various stages. So there are going to be people who are considered to be crucial and important for any kind of project failure as well as their successes. So the IT manager, this is the person who, regardless of the factors involved that we talked about in another reading, the readings lecture, must accept the ultimate responsibility for the success or failure of his or her project. Because obviously this is the person that's managing the entire project. They're monitoring everything, they're keeping an eye on everything. They're going to manage it from the beginning to the end, and making sure that the resources available and the steps are being done properly, the scope is being well kept within, and all the stages are going through smoothly. Then there's the project champion. So every IT project team, if it has to be successful, needs to have a project champion. This person is responsible for making sure that the project happens, motivating people, taking responsibility for the ultimate success and failure. But the project champion must also share the responsibility, because this person is someone from the management who is advocating the implementation and the creation of this project, and they're working side by side, the IT project manager themselves, to make it happen. Then of course there are business unit personnel, people who are assigned to the project from the business unit, from the business side of things. They must also take their assignments very seriously, the work that they're supposed to do. They must be involved from the very beginning. They must make sure that they support the IT team. If the project charter, the project planning, or the steering committee does not adequately present the goals of the project, and the people in the business units who understand the goals do not stand up and say that this project is not clearly defined, then obviously they're going to be responsible for it later on when the problem happens. The IT department personnel who are going to help with the technicality of things must obviously be held responsible, because they will be the one responsible for producing the highest quality of that particular project. They need to be involved in it. The IT manager may be the head of this team, but obviously without those members it really can't happen. The senior management obviously are very important with respect to IT projects, because they are the one approving the budgets, they are the one approving all the responsibilities and the authorities, and they have to constantly provide their support to the IT project, regardless of whether it's a project that's completely the IT's responsibility. So no senior management should approve an IT project without understanding the benefits and the risks involved with the system, and if they do, they must be held responsible. And without the senior management's involvement in such a thing and understanding of such a technical project and its business requirements, such a project cannot succeed, and it is bound to fail. We've already discussed the importance of why it is so crucial for the top management, or us managers or future managers, to understand the technicality of things, because if we don't, we're unable to be able to identify why a particular project should be given the go ahead, or why it should be stopped, or why it is so crucial. The vendors, even though they are outsiders, are responsible. Choosing the right kind of vendors, looking at their capacities, their capabilities, their abilities, their history with similar projects, their experiences, their resources is very important. So if they are unable to deliver what they promised, if they are unable to create what they said that they would, or to provide what they said what they would, and the implementation of such a project is not done well by the vendors, or if they have a lack of communication with the business itself for which they are implementing those projects, then such disasters are bound to happen. So success is just as much based on the vendor from whom we are getting the services for implementing a system or getting it developed. The consultants obviously are people involved in the implementation and the user training process, as well as the change management, and they obviously are bringing in a third party perspective. They have their experience to teach the organization of what they should or should not do for a possible success of their project. So they need to be held responsible for the same. So the idea is that we need to understand that a project failure or a project success is not just dependent on a couple of things. It's dependent on several things. So a template for project success utilizing 4 dimensions, which are meeting design goals, benefit to the user, end user, the benefit to the developing organization, as well as benefit to the community. So an IT project successful is considered successful if it has the following things, which is it is profitable for the sponsor, owner of the contractors, which is the company themselves. It achieves its business purpose in 3 ways, which is strategic, tactical, as well as operational, which is all 3 levels of management. It meets the determined objectives that were predetermined rather before the project even started, then it will be considered successful. It meets the quality thresholds with respect to the efficiency it is providing and the quality assurance from the software quality assurance point of view that it must pass through the testing. Notice that these are very similar and are corresponding to the risk factors that we talked about in another audio lecture for the same case. You will notice that they are the same things, though these are like the counterpoints to those risk factors. So it is produced to specification within budget and on time. Obviously, if it goes over budget, as it was discussed in the risk factors reading, where if a particular project goes over budget, is done later than it was supposed to be, is not done according to the pre-specified scope of the project, then it's not a success, right? It's a failure, or at least a partial failure. All parties, the users, the sponsors, as well as the project team who are developing, are happy during the project and the outcome of the project. So that may be easier said than done. Saying that everybody's happy is not always going to happen. Sometimes the users say this is not what we wanted. Sometimes the sponsors say it was too expensive. By sponsors, it means the upper management actually providing the money for it. Or the project team might say that we were overworked or underpaid, or that it was over ambitious, or it didn't really achieve what we were hoping it would achieve. So there are several things. So many authors, on the other hand, have suggested that time and cost and user specifications should be considered to be the criteria for it. Then this article actually talks about the famous organizational behavior theory referred to as the attribution theory, which is basically that people tend to have a set of antecedents, or rather the independent variables are information that they have before a system is implemented, the beliefs that they have about the system's potential implementation and what it will come out, and the motivation involved. Then there are some attributions that are perceived causes. Whenever something happens, based on the information that they had beforehand, based on their own beliefs, based on their motivation about a particular system or a thing, they will then believe what caused something. So this is an important aspect. This particular article actually talks about how the attribution theory can actually make us better or help us understand why a particular project would be considered a success or a failure by a group of people. So they may perceive the causes in a certain way because they attribute, for instance, if their belief was that this information system will never succeed, it will never achieve. If something else happens, if the project fails because of some external factor, they would immediately attribute their own beliefs here, and they'll say, oh, we knew this is never going to succeed. If they believed it will succeed and provide efficiency beforehand, if they believe that this is bound to be efficient, even if it is efficient because of some other reasons, even if it's efficient because of the vendor's better software support instead of that of the better user training, they'll assume that's the case. Then the attribution theory talks about, these are the attribution theories. Then it talks about the attributional theories of where they attribute it to. So the consequences, a change in the behavior, or on the effect that it will have on their behavior, or their expectancy from a system. So it looks at, if we were to look at this particular page, on page number 4, there is a conceptual framework that they presented for their research article. They actually created a questionnaire. They got people to answer it based on these reasons of why they attributed the success and failure of a project to something. So there were some independent variables, there were internal and external factors, and the questions were: to what extent was the project's success or failure something to do with people or circumstances, and to what extent was the cause of the project's success or failure due to something about that particular person who's answering these questions. Then another variable was the stability or instability. So in the future, will this same cause again influence what happens to the IT projects you're involved in? So they're actually asking people these questions. They asked people these questions. And then there was global and specific. Was the cause of the project success or failure something that affects just your personal involvement as an employee or as a user in the IT project? Does it influence other areas of your work as well that are not directly related to you? to what extent was the cause of the success or the failure of the project controllable by you? And then there are of course moderating variables such as your position in the organization, and then they attributed that to the success or failure of the project. So this conceptual framework that they use to analyze and understand people's beliefs about the success or failure of projects was based on the attribution theory that I talked about earlier. That is based on the organizational behavioral theories that we've studied in earlier semesters regarding human behavior. Anyway, so the results were found, and the results are presented here, which you can obviously review. An overview of those results are that the respondents for the IT project failure mentioned many reasons or causes. The most important ones were that there is a lack of user support and involvement can be an issue. The lack of properly defined project scope is usually the issue. Lack of the upper management support and commitment is an issue, and poor project management leadership are the major causes. Most of the failed IT project mentioned by the respondents were between medium to large size companies. IT support workers were most likely to strongly deny the responsibility for an IT project on themselves than executives. So they did not believe that they were responsible. Over half of the respondents believe that the same cause would influence what happens to IT projects that they are involved in. Or are not involved in. So in particular, respondents who had a senior management role were agreeing to the fact that the same would cause another IT project failure. So that means that they understood that their roles are important. So this is a very nice article that actually supports its arguments with some research findings of what results in the success or failure of a particular IT project, and that's pretty much it. I would recommend that this particular article be read side by side or understood side by side with the other reading that talked about the eight failure cases and the 6 factors of a project's failure. So it'll help you better understand both of them. So that's pretty much it. Thank you.